I can. Cool. Okay. All right. Well, welcome to those who may be tuning in to this slightly unusual hackathon. I think I'll spend about 25 minutes going over what this is about. Checking that you can see my screen. Okay. Okay, so I wouldn't worry too much about the word live at the moment. It's just an indication that things are going to become more organic, fluid, etc. And obviously the oxymoron of live and machinery put together, organic and metallic, is part of what we're exploring here. I'm very excited about when machine metaphors stop applying to machines because they become intelligent. It's also terrifying, of course, but I will share some of the opportunities here and how they might meet risks as well. And there's a lot of philosophy and conceptualizing here, and I'm sure most of the people who are listening are eager to build. So I'm going to try and give a simplified version of all of this. And of course, you're free to check out the many resources that we have already. Hopefully, we will be able to send out that information along other channels. So I'm going to start with actually playing a 10-minute orientation video from earlier, which will kind of set the stage, and I'll take it from there. This is about 10 minutes. I do want to check whether audio works.
People tell you that something is about to happen.
People tell you that the size of the economy is growing every year. You can chart this. It's a very steady growth rate. And you can take that same data and people will zoom it out and then give it to you. It's the same data, but this time it gets plotted like that. If you go back 2,500 years rather than just 200 years. And then they draw these question marks. This is from a blog post by Olin Karnowski, where he describes feeling like he's in an aircraft. Seems like things are speeding up, and something is about to happen that's very, very different. That's not just going in a straight line, which things moving horizontally. And presumably all this is happening because people tell you that civilization is advancing. Because the power of human minds. And yet, it's very hard to put our mind to imagining what the future is like. For a lot of people, the less so now. But even now, there is this sense of AI is just another technology. And a lot more religious versions where AI is just total, the end of times, the nerd rapture. Or graphs like the kind that I just showed you, which are supposed to be predictions. And they are predictions, but they're not imaginations very much.
So there's a question of how we can do better and what it would mean to respect the future that we want to imagine. And I think there are some ways to imagine. There's this quote by the sci-fi author William Gibson about distribution, that the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. I think it could mean a few different things, but maybe one way to think about it is the emphasis on distribution. So there are some people who are living in the future, who are imagining the future. Some departments in academia, they're hidden away, some secrets that people know, or just lots of collective potential that hasn't been met that creates the future and is quite predictive. And here's another quote. We tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. And they're connected to each other. It's not like this one little sharp tool that enters and changes everything immediately. It's more that it gets evenly distributed and people do amazing things with it. Here's another made-up quote. Probably heard something like this before in the context of mathematics, programming, whatever. Probably said some version of it. Maybe you even believe it. You only understand it if you can program it. That if you have some idea, it's not real. It's just like a comment. And you all know you've written a comment. Yes, this function will handle the rest. And then you get to sit down and write that function, and it just doesn't work. So comments are not first-class citizens. Code is. Comments are just dreams, wishes, hypotheticals. And there are some glimpses of the future that we have already to work with related to comments and code. Copilot. Maybe you all use it. I don't know. Maybe you hate it. But the idea is simple, or at least one of them is. You can turn your comments into code. Doesn't do this perfectly. Sometimes it's more annoying than useful, but it can do that. It can take this informal English language thing and turn into this formal, structured thing. It can take this more human-like, contextual, quote, vague, unquote, thing and turn it into a very clear, unambiguous structure. So here's another take on that quote. You can only scale it if you can formalize it, or you can only scale it if you can structure it. And this is something that's been with us for a while. So if you want to scale something, if you want globalization of McDonald's, better have very modular, structured recipes and ways to transport the logistics of it. But it's been here longer. This is from a Charlie Chaplin film of the conveyor belt and commentary on Fordism and how much this changed, where you could replicate things, you could scale them. This is, I want to claim, cookie cutter scaling. You have this fixed schema, and then you copy paste it. And that's almost the definition of what scale means. You can talk about things that don't scale, things that require attention, or things that don't scale. If you want to scale things, you'd better come up with a structure that will actually replicate. And I want to invite us all to scaling attentively. where instead of replicating fixed structure, what if we worked with ubiquitous attentive infrastructure? I'm going to read that backwards. First, we're talking about infrastructure, which is sort of supposed to dissolve in the background. It's a layer rather than a tool, and becomes a host, a site, a space, an arena for meaningful activity that happens within it. I'm talking about attentive. You saw in the GitHub Copilot, there's this new transformation that allows you to move from the informal to the formal, that can take and do things intelligently, contextually, that is about the local specific thing, and is sensitive to details in a way that rigid structure cannot be. And I'm interested less in just Copilot, but when this sort of intelligence is available in the walls, essentially, like your sockets and electricity, where it's cheap and fast and everywhere. And isn't this crazy, it can do anything intelligence, but it's just this mildly or moderately intelligent thing that can do this transformation attentively, and that changes the nature of scale, where scaling does not require fixed structure because structure can be automated, can be created by the machines, can work directly with the unstructured stuff. So that's what I'm interested in. There's one angle on respecting the future. We're not going to balk at this idea of attentivity, but explore what can be created when you can take this for granted. That's what ubiquity means. And so when you can do that, what wasn't a first-class citizen becomes first-class citizens for infrastructure that can auto-structure, like comments. Instead of writing code, instead of writing a huge, long code base, maybe you'll write a huge, long comment base. Maybe instead of writing books and posts and papers, you write prompts that will turn into books and posts and papers. Maybe you'll craft wishes and we'll combine our wishes rather than writing detailed instructions and manuals. Maybe you'll express your dreams. Maybe you will reach out into this larger fabric of intelligence that is ubiquitous and surrounds you and articulate your little prayers. That's going to be a different sort of a language. I'm going to stop here. Okay. So people tell you that something is okay. So okay. Okay, I'm missing a slide here. Stop sharing for just a second and re-add it.
Okay, sorry for that. There you go. Yeah, so that was probably a lot of information, and I'm going to try to simplify it now a little bit more mundane and amenable to some hopefully simple engineering of at least proofs of concepts that we might be excited about, where we do have these uh, things that weren't first-class citizens becoming first-class citizens. So talk about this hackathon uh, is about connection. And on the right-hand side, you are seeing a little bit of a drawing I did for someone's art project recently at a Web3 pop-up city in Thailand. And there are just 3 panels on this. The first 2 panels are what I don't want, and the third panel is what I am excited about. The first panel is a human prostrating to an AI god that will solve everything for them. The second panel is actually AI human interfaces that you see a lot of, or AI interfaces. And I'm not very interested in those either. In the third panel, you can see networks of people. See, there's dots now, and AI helping bridge those. So that's what I'm really interested in, is in human interfaces, or interfaces between living beings more generally, facilitated by AI, and therefore lowering the barriers that normally exist. So much more infrastructural, as we saw in the video, much more like the internet, for example. But obviously, there's lots of disanalogies which were being explored in that video, namely that we can have attentivity at scale. We can scale things that don't normally scale. So for this hackathon, I will say it is about composing them, like composing a piece of music, not AI interfaces, but AI-based interfaces that are wholesome to interact with. As I said, not interfaces to AI, and using what it's actually good at. So maybe AI is not so good at writing inspiring essays or poems, but it is good at if you dump like an like one time I was making a schedule very roughly in my notes, and then it just wasn't, somewhere I didn't use the 12-hour time, somewhere I'd use the 24-hour time. I just dumped it into Claude or whatever, and then asked it to just format it. And it did that really well. So it can transform unstructured data. Of course, it takes a lot of time and it's expensive, but we are looking to build for when those become cheaper, faster, and more reliable. And we want to look at design principles that will work together. That's the composing part. We want to compose a whole interface rather than just the usual way to do it is tack on a chat assistant to a website or document, add an animated GIF, and you're done. Now it's powered by AI. Definitely not that. So chatbots are illegal in this workshop, in this hackathon. And as I was saying earlier, we want to look to the future. So we're not going to explore only just what's possible today. We're not going to jump to AGI. We want to look at the middle period. What happens when we have AI that's like today, that's only mildly creative, it's not super creative, but very cheap, fast, etc., and less error prone. So we're also going to look at transformations. Let's just stop here for a second. Transformations that can happen from that. So an example I like to use is the internet is kind of just like telegraph technology, except just message passing. Except message passing has become really cheap, fast, more reliable. But if you just set that or drew a graph of the rate of message passing or something, you would not draw a picture of an exciting future where people are doing jobs remotely via just faster telegraph. So we want to look at that kind of transformation that allows new kinds of meanings to happen, even though they're only quantitative changes. They end up in qualitative changes in our lifestyles. And we're less excited about building like the final eternal principles, but enabling adaptivity. We don't have to worry about this very much. I've spoken about this, the natural order of tech maturing. And of course, these are experimental designs. I'm not an expert on design. You didn't apply for this hackathon. You're just sort of coming here. And the proposals will probably be somewhat speculative, and the design here is going to be very counterintuitive. But hopefully the resources will help through that. Okay, so to simplify, I'm going to talk about just one example. I'm going to share the one trick that's going to make up for, or going to build on the video you saw. And I will share the one goal that I'm interested in that's behind this whole new design philosophy. Here's a teaser. The example is website prompts. The trick is P2P interfaces. The goal is scaling without structure. And of course, your role through engaging with all of this is to be frustrated, actually, and then design things that aren't going to be frustrating to use. So a lot of these things are going to be very, all of the things that come with hyper customization. You want to use that in a way that's actually wholesome and sane and rich as an experience rather than just annoying and potentially abusive. You want to not do that. So I'm just running through this quickly, so we'll be done in like 5 minutes. The example is website prompt. So this is how websites are done currently. Is that there's a web server that hosts some website source code, and it just, as you were seeing, that little thingy over here is supposed to be a cookie cutter. You just copy paste the website on each client that wants to visit the website. So it downloads the same source code. It is literally a duplication machine that duplicates. So for example, if you're on this Google Meet link, it downloads the same protocol, downloads the same app into your machine. And that's just how we do scale. And the alternative, which is slightly speculative, but that's what we want to do, try to build proofs of concepts of these speculative technologies, is we have a website prompt instead of a sort of prompt from the web server. And on the client side, there's a prompt. So the web server prompt might say stuff like, oh, I need the app to have basic interfaces to interact with someone else's video, such as mute, etc. And I want access to these plugins that we've built. And that's all that you suggest in the website prompt. On the client side prompt, the client might have taste like, oh, well, I prefer like colors to be generally dark. I really dislike rectangular cameras. Can you have like more circular interfaces? And those two prompts combine to create a just-in-time website, or in this case, maybe a web app. And that isn't possible today because the inference cost and efficiency is just low, but it will be possible soon. So we want to make these peer-to-peer interfaces happen just in time. We want to design for such a future. And if you're wondering about this little line coming from here, just to emphasize that each person, because they have different client-side prompts, might combine. So this is what this is really about. It's about combination of prompts, as you saw in the last list in the video. It's like prompts, wishes, prayers. These are all like potential objects that combine and then create the final actualization of the website in green. So you'll have a completely different website if you're like, oh, I like my website to be minimal and like in grids, information is clear. And the same web server will give you a different interface entirely based on the combination of the prompts of the two of you. And of course, it doesn't need to be just combining two people's prompts. It could be like a community, it could be like a group. And you don't have to constantly prompt it. You probably have it saved, maybe for a session, maybe an AI is learning on the side, what kinds of tailorings you like. And the important thing is you're moving beyond parametric changes. Websites can already be, you can switch to dark theme or you can add a plugin. They're only minimal changes rather than creating the website based on these prompts, rather than auto-structuring based on informal potentials. So this is the one trick that I want you to use, and you'll find recipe documents later on about how to think about these and replace a fixed structure with auto-structuring interfaces that will walk you through step by step. You'll work with a problem space and end up with a new design. So that's going to be very helpful. It's been very helpful for people in the past. But here's the general idea to summarize for you: is there's some the idea is to have P2P meaning, where P2P means both peer-to-peer and potential to potential, maybe prayer to prayer. But the idea is that these fluid, more potential objects such as prompts have a lot of surface area. They can capture a lot of things, very similar to having like parameterized things, like parameterized, like you can change fonts on your Kindle. That'll change the layout of your book, how it reads. But that's parametric. You can only select from a drop down. But with AI, you can browse not just what's already created. With generative AI, you can browse even hypothetical things, like browsing hypothetical images using an image generator rather than just Googling images. So you can browse hypothetical websites, and here are your preferences. Your preferences match with someone else's preferences, and the AI helps you actuate a specific line that works for both of you. This is what I mean by more connection, because more people can have their values be built into the interfaces rather than, every time Signal, the messaging app, has an update and changes their interface. I'm like, I should have some rights. I'm used to a particular interface. There's some centralization of design. It's nice that you're sending out updates, but I didn't want the colors to switch around on the bubbles like you did. I wanted it like the old-fashioned way. And that isn't impossible to do. I could probably write with some script to do that. But as actuation becomes cheaper thanks to AI, which it is becoming, maybe I could actually use an AI-assisted script now. But if I had that by default, that's the kind of feature you want to design for. And I'll just say a quick few words, since I'm at time for my 30 minutes, on the one goal, which is a little bit abstract. The idea here is to get out of the fixed structure, which I want to say is best termed as bureaucratization, which just makes the medium, the machine in the middle between people, forces people to like conform to the machine in some way, and it like kills your life. Like there's this fixed chair that I have that has to fix my butt and back over. It's not very comfortable. And of course, AI is not going to auto create chairs for me not even in the medium future, I suspect. But that's something that might be possible in digital interfaces and digital infrastructure. So that's what the whole slogan was, that you don't want to have fixed structure. There's this idea that you need fixity in order to connect multiple people. You need some shared commonality. But the shared commonality is only needed when you have, when intelligence is expensive. So it can't attend to the individual peer-to-peer requirements. It's just one thing. You front load your intelligence, you design something good. Once you design it, you just distribute it. Produce, then distribute. But with intelligence being cheap, you can distribute that intelligence and then produce afterwards. So you can produce in the moment for the people involved. And that's the trends that we're on. So you replace this replicating the same thing, this common fixed structure, with just having infrastructure beneath it that can attend to the individual needs. We're not in hyper-localization. We're not doing hyper-personalization. We're helping interpersonalization. And so you'll see more in one of the documents about dealing with risks of dependence, fragmentation, isolation, and how you address those. Because one of the downsides of attentive infrastructure can be hyper-attentive and can be just lock you in various ways and disconnect you. So you want to have wholesome design that doesn't do that. And I'm very interested in what you'll see at the bottom of the post that is linked in the hackathon page, not just bureaucracy in the digital infrastructure, but also in the machinery of understanding. The classic machinery of understanding that we've gotten a lot of use out of is theories. So you have theories in physics, you have theories of design, perhaps. And they have a similar sort of thing that they are dependent on front-loading the design and then distributing it. And so live theory is about distributing theory prompts that become the relevant formalisms in each different context. And so it broadens the scope and makes theories themselves more fluid. Fluid theories, another. I'm going to stop there. That's my last slide. And I hope the documents will help you figure out how to step into this and how to create a product. Yeah. Thanks. Mhm. You ended the stream. Cool. Yeah. Thanks for helping host.